Hello everyone, just making another quick update video here. I think I'm going to try and do this every so often now, just to stay in touch with you guys and let you know where my thoughts are and where I'm going with the channel. You may have seen I've released a post recently explaining how my Patreon has been updated. I've been trying to streamline the thing for a while. I've had it for years and it was a little bit all over the place with the tiers you could select and the offers that were on there for people who did donate. I've tried to make it so it's a bit more fair, and those people who do donate a little bit extra get a little bit extra from me. So from now on, if you donate $5 a month, you have access to all the written work. That's including previews of my book as well, and all the extra posts I put on there with behind the scenes stuff and extra thoughts I've been having and research. If you pay $10 a month, or even if you paid a one-off of $10 for a month, you'd have access to links which would take you to private videos for Patreon eyes only. Those videos aren't going to be withholding information from people. I know people get worried about that, but what I will be doing is basically making early access videos, so you'll get to see them first before they end up on my channel within maybe a month or two. But also there'll be some random talks on there, not dissimilar from this really, where it's just me sharing some of my ideas and thoughts with you guys, the paying patrons, for a bit of extra advice or maybe reviews or ideas on the theories I'm coming up with, and any requests as well. You know, it's mainly to create a dialogue with people out there who want to, you know, be a bit more involved with the channel and what we create on here. But other than that, guys, I'm actually on my way home from a contract signing with a client who has a wedding in August, so I'll be taking photos of their wedding, a summer wedding. That was nice. They were a lovely couple. Like I said, when I'm not making YouTube videos, I am trying to build a profile on the photography business with my wife, and that's what I've been doing today as well. I am actually currently making a video about the Solomonari as well. I was doing that this morning. The Solomonari are an interesting subject, basically wizards, and they do have a slight relation to the Nephilim look like clowns situation. But it's just a topic I thought was so fascinating I had to make a video about and share with you guys. So you will be getting that probably tomorrow, I imagine. I say that, but then these things usually end up taking a hell of a lot longer than I anticipated to edit. But with where I'm going right now, it seems like I'm on track to have that video released for you guys tomorrow evening. I usually try and release them around about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock GMT time, maybe a bit earlier if possible. So you've got that to look forward to as well. And naturally, I'm doing my live shows every Sunday at 9 PM GMT time. And that's usually about 4 PM, 5 PM Eastern Standard Time, depending on when your daylight savings hours is taking place. Yeah, other than that, guys, I guess I just want to talk with you a little bit about some of the ideas I've been having. So I've been researching a lot about global flood myths, you know, and I talked about this a lot in the live show, and I talked about it a lot as well in detail with Alpha Talks a few days ago. So there's a video on his channel where we get into that under the name Nephilim Look Like Clowns. And, you know, I just didn't realise how all-pervasive these global flood myths were. It truly boggled my mind when I started to just see these lists people have compiled of all the myths around the world from every country and every little village within every country on every continent. They have this folk traditional myth story of a huge global deluge, and honestly, it's unprecedented. It's just unprecedented how many flood myths there actually are. And I'm making in my book, I've done a whole chapter on the flood, and it's got to the point where I don't know where to stop because I can't talk about every single myth because there's like 900 of them, if not more. But then at the same time, I want to keep going on about it, you know, to try and hammer home this point that it really did happen, you know, because there seems to be a lot of Western secularist atheistic thought that the flood myth is just a myth. It never really happened. There were many little floods and people over-exaggerated them, or all these myths are just copies of the original Sumerian flood myth, including Noah's Ark story is just another copy of this one Sumerian flood myth, you know, and it's just people retelling the same myth over and over again. It's not that it happened many times, and That's just not what the evidence points to. So it makes you wonder why these so-called professionals in their field are saying these things, because it's obvious that the whole world experienced and is suffering from PTSD from this event, you know, and they all describe it in completely different ways that aren't even parallel or similar to the Noah story. Like, you know, the Noah story is of a man being warned by God to build an ark because the people have become so corrupt, you know, and then once the ark is built, he sends, you know, 2 of every kind of animal to be protected on the ark in order to continue life after the flood. That's the story as we know it. Then yet you have a similar story from Sumerian, you know, and Akkadian Epic of Gilgamesh translations, and in theirs it's one god got really angry with mankind because they were irritating him for one reason or another. So other gods decided to try and help humanity by saving a particular king. Noah wasn't a king, you know, so that's a difference immediately. And this king is well known to be the 10th king of a city pre-flood. And this 10th king of the city was one of the final kings before the flood. So that means he was a Nephilim ruler, you know, because all the kings by that point were corrupt and under the leadership of fallen angels and serpent cults, you know. So it's a completely different story. Although it sounds similar on the surface, what it really is another story that happened alongside Noah's story. It's not a copy of Noah's story, it's a different story of a different survivor being warned by fallen angels that God is seriously about to send a flood. Noah was right, you know. It really is going to happen. And it seems like an attempt by the gods, as they were called, to try and preserve the corrupted creation, the Nephilim, in order to try and continue to corrupt the creation after the flood, hopefully. I guess that was their agenda. And it's just fascinating, because that's a similar sounding story to the Noah flood myth, but the motivation as to why the god wanted to flood the earth is completely different. It's not that mankind had become so corrupt and that it deserved it. In that story, it's that humanity does not deserve to be wiped out. It's just that the god who's doing it is petty and selfish. And if that isn't a twist and a blasphemy against the true creator of the universe, I don't know what else you could describe it as, because that seems to be what it really is. It's a way of making people hate God for the flood, not understanding that it needed to happen, you know, in order to save mankind and humanity. It was a mercy. It wasn't God trying to be cruel, you know. And then there's always these other myths which have no real similarity to those stories at all. Some of these other myths are seeped in metaphorical symbolism and allegory. There's an Indian myth in North America about a great beaver who blocked a dam which caused a flood, you know, which is not really anywhere near to understanding there's no parallel there, you know, to these Middle Eastern, Mesopotamian, you know, Western flood myths. In the Viking depiction, the gods cut up the body of a sky god and use the blood of that sky god, which then floods the earth. But they see it as a refreshing of the earth, like a fertility situation, you know. Again, not really the same at all. And these cutting up the gods and their blood pouring down and therefore creating the oceans type of myth is another common one we hear across the earth. And then these other myths, I call them myths, but really they're just stories, you know, regional stories, which talk about people climbing up to really high places to survive the flood. No one special, no one particular, just a couple of guys, or a man and a woman or something, just climbing up really high and managing to survive, you know. And then what is bizarre, and I've mentioned this in the live show, and it's also going to be in the next video I'm about to release, but there's this strange story of bird women coming down and then mating with the survivors, you know. So that sounds to me like a second incursion myth, you know, which seems to be repeated here and there, scattered around the world, of hybridized beings copulating with surviving humans in order to create more of the same that was there before the flood, more offspring which are deformed, more Nephilim, you know, more bastards and reprobates, if you want to get all Enochian about it. So it's interesting. The flood myth situation is just incredibly fascinating. And I've written about 10 pages about it now in my book, and I think I'm going to have to cut it short and just wrap it up. I think I've made my point, you know. And then the next stage of the book is I'm going to talk about demons and how they came to be and how the flood played a huge role in that, disembodying the Nephilim, you know. It's fascinating. I've realised what I do need to do. I have actually talked about this in the live show a couple of weeks ago, but I do need to make a specific video, I think, about the Freemason connection to clowning and circuses, and specifically with the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey. It seems like those people, that troupe, kind of created the circus as we know it now in the modern age. They're the ones who created troupes of clowns that look the way we know them to look, you know, and they were all Freemasons. And if people haven't figured this out yet, you know, there's a lot of research in Gary Wayne's book about this, but basically these Freemasonry troupes and these lodges are just a continuation of the cults that existed before the flood, which worshipped the fallen angels. But what happened after the flood is the knowledge was preserved in vaults, I believe, and on the 2 pillars which were put in front of Solomon's temple, the knowledge that they used pre-flood to control people was preserved in these vaults and then rediscovered after the flood, and then the secret societies continued after the flood hiding this knowledge, you know, so they could continue to control people and have their influence on the earth, you know. The whole point of Freemasonry and building and being master masons is that they are in control of what is built on the earth and created to keep us in control, you know. They are the architects of the creation around us that we live in, you know, even though they are not the architects of the universe, not even close, you know. That of course that right goes to God. They like to consider themselves the architect of our prison, basically, and they are the gods themselves above us, or they worship the gods which they believe should be above us, which are these fallen angels and the demon spirits on the other side, you know. And it was Freemasons who created circuses, you know. And there was this passage someone sent me in a book, which I mentioned in the live stream, which basically explains that Barnum and Bailey and these Ringling Brothers created a set of shows when they first started, dedicated to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. And what they were basically doing with clowns was acting out these ancient ritualistic rites that go through the lodges, but on a grand scale with animals and clowns, you know. But these clowns were characters, demons no doubt, in the tale of Solomon and his temple that they were retelling. And that's why we have a clown now everywhere. It's a Freemasonic symbol representing the Nephilim, and its sources are wholly in Freemasonry. So I think people get a bit confused when they hear me say, you know, the Nephilim look like clowns. I get the odd comment here where it says, I just don't see it. Nephilim aren't clowns. Nephilim don't look like clowns. It's kind of like, no, you're misinterpreting the point of this, you know. What I'm trying to say is, for the 1000th time here in a new way, is when the Freemasons created the clown, what they were doing were taking pieces of aesthetical things from each individual representation of a specific demon or a Nephilim or a king or an angel or a ruler, specifically Nephilim features, and they melded them together to create the clown as an image, as a caricature, as an amalgamation of all these features. So it's not that Nephilim look like clowns, because there was no such thing as a clown during the time of the Nephilim. It's that clowns are an amalgam caricature of Nephilim features, created by Freemasons to represent their demon gods during their rituals, which are performed during circuses. Or at least they were in the past during the reign of Barnum and Bailey and the Ringling Brothers. And they've just continued it into culture since then. And now they're prolific, they're everywhere, and they're marketed towards children. And when you dress up like a clown, it's no different than African tribes, Mesoamerican tribes, European cultures, and the Wildermen, for example, and the cookery. It's no different from them dressing up like demons to venerate the gods or to scare away demons in their weird ritualistic ways. When they dress up like that, they're evoking the spirits to inhabit their body. Now, when you dress up like a clown, it's the same thing. If you have a clown model in your house, or a poster of a clown on the wall, it's a veneration of an idol of a demon spirit, but you just don't know it, because we've been programmed to believe clowns are silly honking jugglers for the kids to be entertained. They're harmless, right? But no, the sources are in Freemason demonic worship. That's where they come from. That's what they are. They are representations of the gods secret societies venerate. And it sounds crazy, but it's true, you know. And I've created 30 episodes in a series dedicated to trying to explain this to people. But I think some people out there don't realize just how literal I'm being. You know, I show all these examples of folk traditional masks and garb and cultures that venerate the demonic, the Nephilim. And yes, the outfits don't look like a Western clown exactly, but the Western clown was created by taking features from each of these folk traditional clothings. It's an amalgamation. So we'll find in one particular traditional garb, like the cookery Wilderman, for example, the large red nose is always apparent, or the white skin is always apparent. But then there may be other features which a clown doesn't have, and it's kind of like, well, they've taken that one aspect there and put it into the clown. You'll find in some other cultures they like to have colourful plumes of feathers and things like that, especially at festivals and carnivals, you know. Well, that's a feature the Nephilim had, that they also take the psychedelic colours and patterns that went along with it, like birds and reptiles. They've put that into the outfit of a clown, the Freemasons have, to represent the same thing. So the polka dots and the colourful clothing a clown wears is representative of the same thing that carnival wearers wear when they're wearing the feathered plume serpent skin multicoloured pattern clothing. It's the same thing, just westernized into an image that we call a clown. I suppose this is why I have to write the book about it, to try and make these points clear, because I do think a lot of people still get confused with what I'm trying to say, and then they get into weird vain philosophies about it and get really deep about things that aren't really relevant to the theory, talking about archetypical stuff and the role of a jester in society and the symbolic meaning behind a clown, and it's not relevant as far as I'm concerned. They're just vain philosophical pontifications from the heads of people who want to sound deep, you know, and want to add stuff which is just made up from the top of their head. And what I'm trying to do, I suppose, is ground it in things we can literally observe, like the folk traditions, their rituals, and the clothes they wear, which give us glimpses into the visions they have had of demonic spirits and giants from the past, and then to use that to prove that what the Freemasons created was the clown, using these features that they had learnt from their travels into mysticisms from the East, let's say, or even possibly by direct communication with demons. Maybe they've actually seen what they looked like in the secret society cults, you know. Either way, I'm home now, so I'm going to stop the video. But I thought you might appreciate the little rant there, guys. It's, yeah, things like this are rattling around through my brain all the time. Again, like I said, if you want to support the book, there's a GoFundMe down below. Anything at all, any contribution, I'd appreciate. Same for my Patreon. Check it out. Like I said, there's some offers there now to make it a bit more enticing for you guys to get something out of it if you want to support me. Any support at all I'd be thankful for, but check out the Patreon if you haven't already. Thanks for listening, guys. Like I said, I'll have a video out tomorrow talking about the Solomonari Wizards of Romania, and then I'll be back live as well on Sunday. Thanks for listening, and as always, God bless.